Imagine standing in the sudden, piercing chill of a false midday night, watching a solid black sphere perfectly erase the most powerful star in our sky. This cosmic structure relies on an impossible coincidence of geometry, a delicate, fragile balance of absolute distance and physical scale. It is an astronomical illusion so precise that it allows a tiny, desolate rock to completely silence a roaring, superheated inferno. Deep within the crumbling, windswept dust of ancient Babylon, early scholars sat in the quiet hum of their stone observatories to decode this very darkness. They meticulously etched the breathing, 18-year rhythm of the solar system into damp, heavy clay, capturing a celestial heartbeat. Their fragile records form the first bridge between human observation and the infinite longevity of cosmic time, outlasting their empires by millennia. If we were to look closer at the deep, cold expanses of the broader void, we would realise this magnificent shadow play is not a uniquely terrestrial privilege. From the churning coloured storms of distant gas giants to the rusted, desolate deserts of neighbouring alien worlds, the entire planetary neighbourhood participates. The mechanics of alignment are a universal constant, a mesmerizing, galaxy-wide dance of vanishing light and recurring twilight. This shared experience of the void draws dedicated wanderers across continents, chasing a fleeting silver twilight that fundamentally alters the human soul. They stand in open fields, united by a silent language of anticipation, waiting for the exact second the ambient temperature plummets and the world holds its breath. It is a visceral, deeply emotional encounter with the sublime, proving that the geometry of space can temporarily dissolve all earthly concerns. Picture the immense vastness of these massive silent spheres spinning effortlessly above your resting body, millions of miles removed from the quiet sanctuary of your bed. You are safe. These wonders are yours to inherit as you sleep. Surprisingly, the grandest mysteries of the universe often begin with a simple, elegant trick of perspective, observed from the surface of our own fragile world. As the rigid boundaries of your waking life begin to soften and dissolve, your mind is entirely free to wander through the cooling shadows of the solar system. Looking up at the familiar sky, a profound visual illusion governs the mechanics of a total solar eclipse. Looking up at the familiar sky, a profound visual illusion governs the mechanics of a total solar eclipse. The celestial bodies responsible for this phenomenon share a remarkable trait from our terrestrial vantage point. They appear virtually identical in size. This perfect visual match is the foundational geometry that allows the day to turn into sudden, breathtaking twilight. Without this exact apparent equivalence, the spectacle of totality would be a physical impossibility. A smaller moon would merely transit across the blinding solar disk, leaving the daylight largely intact and the world below mostly unbothered. A larger moon would plunge the Earth into prolonged darkness, hiding the delicate, fiery structures that dance at the edge of the sun. It is only through this precise optical overlap that the intricate choreography of an eclipse can unfold. When these two spheres cross paths, the moon acts as a flawless mask, fitting exactly over the brilliant face of our local star. The resulting alignment creates a fleeting, almost impossible perfection that transforms the heavens and silences the world below. Deep within the architecture of our solar system lies a ratio so perfectly balanced it borders on the miraculous. The sun is an incomprehensibly vast sphere of fusing plasma, roughly 400 times wider than the rocky, desolate orb of our moon. Yet this gargantuan difference in physical scale is entirely counteracted by an equally staggering difference in absolute distance. The blazing star at the centre of our neighbourhood sits exactly 400 times farther away from the Earth than its lunar counterpart. This dual coincidence of distance and diameter creates an optical illusion that is entirely unique to our current epoch in the universe. Our planet is essentially a cosmic sweet spot where the mathematics of space cancel themselves out. If we were to look closer at the orbits, we would realise how fragile this mathematical harmony truly is. The universe operates on scales of immense chaos, but here, the celestial mechanics produce a flawless symmetry. Because of this 400-to-1 ratio, a tiny rock can briefly but completely erase the most powerful object in our sky. Far above the atmosphere, a silent darkness detaches itself from the moon and reaches out across the void. This shadow is not a static footprint, but a frantic, racing entity hurled against the curvature of the Earth. It strikes the planet's surface and immediately begins a sweeping sprint across oceans, mountains, and sprawling continents. Propelled by the relentless orbital mechanics of the moon, this localized twilight moves at terrifying velocities. It easily overtakes the rotation of the Earth beneath it, tearing eastward at thousands of miles per hour. A supersonic jet flying at full throttle would struggle to keep pace with the leading edge of this plunging darkness. Those standing in its narrow path are merely waiting to be swallowed by this high-speed astronomical phantom. The shadow sweeps over the landscape with a silent, heavy finality, engulfing whole cities in a matter of seconds. It is a profound reminder that we are riding on a spinning rock, momentarily caught in the crosshairs of a moving cosmic void. Notice the peculiar transformation of the daylight as the celestial clock ticks closer to the moment of totality. The familiar warm golden hue of a clear afternoon begins to wane, replaced by something distinctly alien. A metallic silvery sheen washes over the landscape, rendering the world in a strange high contrast filter that eyes struggle to comprehend. This atmospheric shift occurs because the remaining sunlight is originating only from the extreme edge of the solar disk. The light filtering down is fundamentally altered, lacking the rich, broad spectrum energy that usually bathes our environment. Colours begin to look deeply saturated, while the ambient glow feels simultaneously piercing and dangerously dim. It is a twilight that belongs to no known earthly evening, a bizarre illumination that signals an impending cosmic event. Human vision is ill-equipped to process this rapid degradation of daylight, leading to a visceral sense of unease and anticipation. The world looks like a faded photograph, steeped in a metallic glow that precedes the ultimate darkness. Glance down at the ground beneath a sprawling tree, and the very fabric of light seems to have fractured. The dappled sunlight that normally filters through the canopy in formless circles undergoes a spectacular geometric metamorphosis. Every gap between the fluttering leaves acts as a natural pinhole camera, projecting the drama of the heavens onto the earth. Thousands of tiny, crisp crescent shapes suddenly blanket the pavement, the grass, and the sides of buildings. As the moon aggressively carves away at the sun above, these miniature projections mirror the exact phase of the eclipse. The ground becomes a living mosaic, an inverted astronomical display scattered effortlessly across the ordinary environment. This phenomenon transforms a simple patch of shade into a temporary observatory for the naked eye. The rustling canopy above continuously shifts the projections, causing the glowing crescents to dance and shimmer with the wind. It is one of the most accessible and mesmerizing visual anomalies, turning simple foliage into a lens for the cosmos. A sudden, unseasonal chill permeates the air, breaking the steady warmth of what was previously a typical day. As the lunar disk relentlessly swallows the sun, the primary source of thermal energy for the local environment is abruptly severed. The atmosphere reacts with surprising speed to this sudden deficit, causing the ambient temperature to plummet dramatically. In dry, clear climates, this rapid atmospheric cooling can strip away more than 10 or 15 degrees of heat in a matter of mere minutes. The sudden lack of direct infrared radiation creates a sharp, piercing cold that settles heavily over the landscape and those standing within it. Spectators often find themselves suddenly reaching for jackets, shivering as the false night violently drains the warmth from their exposed skin. This thermal shock serves as a visceral physical reminder of our absolute dependence on the distant burning star above. The cooling air fundamentally changes the local barometric pressure, actively contributing to the eerie, static stillness that precedes the final moment of totality. It is a profound sensory experience, forcing observers to physically feel the universe withdraw its sustaining heat. Curiously, the biological rhythms of the natural world are entirely hijacked by the creeping shadow in the sky. As the daylight takes on its metallic hue, the animal kingdom interprets the fading illumination as the undeniable onset of evening. An unnatural quiet begins to fall over the wilderness as diurnal creatures instinctively prepare for a night that is arriving hours too soon. Songbirds shift their vocalizations, trading their bright afternoon calls for the softer melodic choruses usually reserved for dusk. Flocks can be seen darting urgently through the dimming air, returning to their roosts and nests to settle in for sleep. Farm animals calmly march back toward their barns, driven by an ancient, unbreakable clock dictated solely by ambient light. This widespread behavioral deception reveals how deeply intertwined life on Earth is with the steady cycle of the sun. Even insects respond, with crickets beginning to chirp their nighttime symphonies into the cooling twilight air. The eclipse creates an entire landscape of confused ecology, plunging the natural world into a beautifully synchronized false slumber. Just moments before the sun is completely extinguished, a ghostly phenomenon slithers across plain, pale surfaces on the ground. Faint, rapidly undulating ripples of alternating light and dark bands begin to wash over the sides of buildings and stretches of pavement. These elusive optical illusions, known as shadow bands, look strikingly similar to the rippling sunlight seen at the bottom of a swimming pool. This frantic visual distortion is caused by the final, thread-thin sliver of sunlight piercing through Earth's turbulent upper atmosphere. The differing temperatures and densities of the air currents bend this narrow beam of light, scattering it chaotically before it hits the ground. It is the exact same atmospheric interference that makes distant stars appear to twinkle in the night sky. Catching sight of these elusive bands requires a keen eye and a bit of luck, as they are notoriously faint and brief. They sprint across the landscape with an erratic, nervous energy, signalling the absolute final seconds of remaining daylight. Watching these ethereal snakes of light writhe over the earth is one of the most hypnotic preludes to totality. The atmosphere itself seems to hold its breath as the localized cooling completely disrupts the invisible currents of the air. The steady breeze that had been blowing all afternoon suddenly falters, losing its momentum as the thermal dynamics of the environment collapse. This abrupt stabilization of the local temperature gradient causes the wind to shift its direction entirely or die out completely. An oppressive, heavy stillness settles over the landscape, amplifying the strange quiet that has already claimed the animal kingdom. Leaves that were previously rustling in the canopy hang motionless, suspended in a bizarre meteorological pause created by the approaching shadow. This sudden lack of air movement contributes heavily to the surreal, dreamlike quality of the fading afternoon. It is as if the Earth is pausing all mechanical systems in anticipation of the cosmic alignment occurring overhead. The resulting calm feels heavy and expectant, stripping away the normal chaotic background noise of rustling grass and rushing wind. In this newly formed silence, observers are left standing in a stark, motionless void, waiting for the sky to close. Surrounding the observer, the fundamental perception of colour begins to warp and shift in terrifyingly beautiful ways. As the overall light level drops, human eyes automatically transition from using bright light cone cells to low light rod cells. This biological pivot triggers the Purkinje effect, fundamentally altering how the brain processes the spectrum of the visible world. Warm colours that previously popped with vibrancy, like brilliant reds and deep oranges, suddenly appear muted, muddy, and surprisingly dark. Conversely, cool colours undergo an unnatural enhancement, causing greens and blues to radiate with an intense, luminous energy against the gathering gloom. A crowd of onlookers wearing different shades becomes a living canvas, demonstrating the sudden failure of standard human vision. the environment takes on an alien cinematic palette that cannot be captured by standard photography or adequately described by memory. This optical distortion makes the final moments before totality feel intensely psychological, as reality itself seems to be changing its rendering engine. It is the final sensory manipulation before the ultimate plunge into darkness, painting the world in the chilling hues of the deep ocean. Plunging into this chilling deep ocean of darkness, the sun's absolute edge reveals a final fractured brilliance. The moon, contrary to its smooth appearance from Earth, is a jagged sphere scarred by ancient impacts and towering mountain ranges. As the lunar disk makes its final approach to cover the sun, it does not create a perfectly smooth seal against the solar surface. Instead, the remaining threads of sunlight are violently broken and separated by the rugged topography of the lunar limb. Deep valleys and crater edges along the moon's profile allow isolated pockets of intensely bright plasma to spill through into the darkening sky. These isolated points of light form a blinding, glittering necklace strung along the curved edge of the encroaching shadow. Observers standing in the path of this phenomenon are effectively looking straight down the length of lunar canyons illuminated by a star. The brilliant beads flicker and shift rapidly as the moon continues its microscopic glide across the final fraction of a degree. It is a stunning visual confirmation that the celestial body extinguishing our daylight is a complex three-dimensional world of rugged extremes. Historically, these sparkling points of light were a source of profound confusion and wonder for early astronomers tracking the celestial mechanics. It was not until the 19th century that a precise explanation for this dazzling fragmentation of the sun's edge was definitively articulated. An English astronomer closely observed an annular eclipse and accurately deduced that lunar topography was the culprit behind the brilliant display. By meticulously mapping the timing and location of the glowing droplets, science transformed a terrifying omen into a predictable optical marvel. The realization that we could indirectly measure the height of lunar mountains by watching sunlight bleed through their valleys was revolutionary. It linked the massive abstract movements of planetary bodies to tangible, physical landscapes that could be analysed from millions of miles away. Today, this glittering phenomenon bears the name of the man who first brought this elegant explanation to the scientific forefront. Tracking these fleeting beads remains crucial for modern astrophysics, providing exact measurements of the solar diameter with astonishing precision. Every flickering point of light serves as a fiery testament to the power of human observation, decoding the mechanics of the heavens. As the glittering necklace of light rapidly consumes itself, the celestial geometry narrows down to a singular, breathtaking focal point. The final lunar valley allows one last, intensely concentrated burst of pure solar radiation to pierce the gathering gloom. This solitary beacon blazes with an incomprehensible ferocity against the newly blackened sky, dominating the entire atmospheric canvas. Paired with the faint, nascent glow of the sun's outer atmosphere beginning to emerge, the visual effect is staggeringly beautiful. The solitary point of blinding light sits atop a thin, ethereal halo, creating the unmistakable illusion of a cosmic piece of jewellery hanging in the void. It is the climax of the partial phase, a split-second transition where the overwhelming power of the sun is compressed into a single sparkling jewel. As you rest quietly, allow your breathing to slow and deepen, feeling the steady rhythm of your own pulse anchoring you in this moment. The diamond ring effect is the universe's grandest flourish, demanding absolute attention before it is abruptly snuffed out. When that final bead collapses, the true night falls with a swiftness that is both terrifying and utterly magnificent. Scanning the horizon during this sudden onset of false night reveals an optical illusion that defies all natural earthly logic. While the sky directly overhead plunges into a deep twilight indigo, the distant edges of the visible landscape tell a different story. A vibrant, glowing band of sunset colours completely encircles the observer in a perfect, unbroken, 360-degree ring of twilight hues. This surreal panoramic sunset exists because the observer is merely standing entirely within the localized footprint of the lunar umbra. Dozens of miles away in every direction, the sun is still partially shining, illuminating the atmosphere outside the path of totality. That distant, scattered light filters horizontally into the darkened zone, painting the entire horizon with the classic shades of dawn and dusk. Looking toward the edges of the shadow, one can see the vibrant oranges, pinks and yellows locked in a frozen state of atmospheric transition. It is a striking visual boundary, mapping the exact physical limits of the moon's dark grip on the local environment. Standing in the centre of this glowing ring feels like being trapped in a colossal, inverted cathedral of light and shadow. Down on the surface, the sudden plunging of daylight triggers a cascade of unintended mechanical reactions within human infrastructure. Modern cities and quiet suburban streets are wired with photoelectric sensors designed to monitor the slow, predictable fade of a normal evening. The rapid, brutal drop in illumination during an eclipse violently tricks these simple circuits into initiating their nighttime protocols. Row by row, streetlights hum to life, casting harsh, artificial sodium glows onto sidewalks that were baking in the afternoon sun mere moments ago. Automated security lights on residential homes flicker on, and skyscrapers suddenly illuminate their interior floors against the bizarre metallic twilight. This sudden burst of human-made illumination stands in sharp, absurd contrast to the cosmic drama unfolding in the heavens above. The premature activation of these electrical grids highlights how deeply our modern existence is synchronized with the reliable rhythm of the rotating Earth. It is a moment of technological confusion, where our built environment blindly reacts to a false dusk imposed by a passing celestial rock. The glowing cityscapes serve as a stark reminder of our tiny, automated lives, carrying on beneath the shadow of planetary mechanics. Beyond the visual strangeness, the final seconds before totality are characterized by an overwhelming heavy collapse of ambient sound. The frantic, confused chirping of the animal kingdom that swelled during the partial phases suddenly hits a wall of profound stillness. As the last sliver of the sun vanishes, a deep, resonant quiet drops over the landscape like a thick woolen blanket. Even in crowded observation areas, human spectators are frequently struck speechless by the sheer, imposing weight of the vanishing light. The collective gasp of thousands of people often gives way to a stunned, reverent hush that stretches across the darkened terrain. It is a primal, involuntary reaction to the sudden removal of the most fundamental force of life in our solar system. Notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest in this quiet space, sinking deeper into relaxation as the world around you fades away. This profound silence is not merely the absence of noise, but a heavy, palpable presence that commands absolute awe. In this acoustic void, the sheer scale of the universe feels intimately close, whispering the ancient, silent rules of orbital geometry. Casting a glance toward the western horizon just before the darkness hits offers a terrifying glimpse of the mechanics in motion. Observers with a clear, elevated view can actually perceive the physical edge of the lunar shadow barreling across the Earth's surface. It manifests as a towering, bruised wall of darkness, a massive atmospheric storm front entirely devoid of clouds or moisture. This towering curtain of night consumes the distant landscape with horrifying speed, swallowing mountains and valleys in silent, rapid succession. The sheer velocity of the approaching umbra makes the rotation of the planetary bodies suddenly, violently tangible to the naked eye. It is one of the few times humans can directly observe the true, terrifying speed at which the cosmos operates. Being directly in the path of this charging darkness triggers a deep, ancestral adrenaline response that logic struggles to suppress. The sensation of being physically swept over by a celestial shadow is entirely different from the slow, gentle creeping of a normal sunset. It is a visceral, high-speed collision with the void, plunging the immediate world into an instant, breathtaking midnight. As the crushing darkness finally takes hold, the deeply hidden architecture of the broader galaxy is instantly brought to the forefront. The daytime sky, usually a blinding blue canvas that obscures everything beyond our local atmosphere, becomes a transparent window to the cosmos. Where there was only an empty expanse moments ago, a scattering of brilliant icy points of light suddenly pierces the gloom. The brightest planets in our solar system are the first to reveal themselves, shining steadily against the deep, unnatural indigo. Venus and Jupiter often blaze with astonishing clarity, acting as celestial anchors framing the blackened, eclipsed sun in the centre. Shortly after, the brightest stars from distant constellations begin to emerge, completely ignoring the fact that the clock dictates it is midday. This abrupt revelation of the stellar background completely disorients the standard human perception of time and space. Seeing winter constellations burning brightly during a summer afternoon shatters the comforting illusion of our isolated blue sky world. It is a stark, beautiful reminder that we're constantly surrounded by an infinite populated void that is merely hidden by the glare of our local star. Beyond the sudden chill, the very texture of the air itself seems to undergo a bizarre physical transformation during the height of the shadow. The atmosphere loses the kinetic, radiant energy that normally charges a sunlit environment, leaving behind a sterile, heavy emptiness. It feels as though the environment has been placed inside a massive, invisible vacuum chamber, stripped of its standard vitality. The air lacks the convective bouncing of thermal currents, resulting in a deadened, flat sensation against the skin that is difficult to articulate. It is a distinct, meteorological lifelessness, fundamentally different from the cooling dampness of a naturally occurring dusk or dawn. The loss of solar radiation removes a subtle, vibrating pressure that we subconsciously associate with the state of simply being awake. Feel the comfortable weight of your limbs relaxing further into whatever is supporting you, totally insulated from the cosmic forces shifting above. This palpable atmospheric deadness amplifies the surreal, dreamlike state of standing beneath a vanished sun. It forces the observer to acknowledge that the sun provides not just light and heat, but the fundamental vibrating energy of the atmosphere itself. Throughout all of recorded history, the singular emotional response to this grand astronomical alignment has remained remarkably consistent across cultures. Regardless of scientific understanding or technological advancement, witnessing the total obscuration of the sun triggers a profound, overwhelming sense of awe. It bypasses the logical centers of the modern brain, striking a deep primal chord of vulnerability and cosmic insignificance. The experience forcefully recalibrates human perspective, shrinking our terrestrial concerns down to the microscopic scale of a passing shadow. Standing in the cold, false night, looking up at the blackened hole in the sky, evokes a complex mixture of dread, wonder, and profound gratitude. Observers frequently find themselves weeping uncontrollably, overwhelmed by the sheer, undeniable beauty of the universe's mechanical perfection. This universal emotional resonance connects the modern spectator directly to ancient ancestors who watched the exact same geometry unfold millennia ago. It is a shared psychological inheritance, a built-in recognition of the sublime and terrifying power of the orbital dance. Long after the light returns and the shadow races away, the heavy, vibrating impact of that awe lingers in the mind, permanently altering how one looks at the ordinary sky. Gazing into that altered ordinary sky during totality, the universe peels back its blinding veil to reveal a hidden crown. Stripped of its overwhelming glare, the star presents its most elusive and breathtaking feature, the solar corona. This ghostly outer atmosphere extends for vast distances into the void, appearing as a delicate pearlescent halo suspended in the darkness. For an entire lifetime, this ethereal structure hangs above our heads, entirely masked by the sheer brute force of the primary light engine. It requires the precise momentary intervention of the lunar body to completely block that overwhelming radiation. Only then can the fragile, wispy tendrils of this superheated gas be seen stretching outward like frozen, white breath in the cold of space. Deep within the mechanics of this pale halo lies a profound and violent paradox that challenges fundamental physics. Common sense dictates that moving further away from a heat source should result in a drop in temperature, much like stepping back from a roaring campfire. Yet, the outer atmosphere of our star blatantly defies this logic, burning at a temperature exponentially hotter than the surface below. While the visible face of the star simmers at a relatively modest heat, the surrounding ethereal wisps boil at incomprehensible extremes. Scientists still fiercely debate the exact mechanisms that pump such tremendous, invisible energy into this rarefied outer layer. It is a terrifying realization that the gentle, glowing mist visible during an eclipse is actually a turbulent cauldron of superheated, ionized gas. Invisible forces of staggering power sculpt this superheated plasma into intricate, mesmerizing geometric architectures. Massive magnetic fields, generated deep within the churning interior, burst outward and violently twist the coronal gas into defined pathways. These magnetic lines of force act like invisible glassblowers, shaping the chaotic energy into elegant petal-like structures and sweeping elongated streamers. To the observer below, the halo does not appear as a uniform blur, but rather as a highly structured, almost biological entity. Fine, hair-like striations can be traced along the magnetic field lines, mapping the exact flow of charged particles blasting into the solar system. The sheer scale of these sculpted petals is difficult to fathom, with an ethereal arch easily capable of engulfing massive planetary spheres. Allow your shoulders to drop and your muscles to unwind, feeling completely supported as your mind maps these massive, swirling currents of energy. Anchored safely in your restful state, you can simply observe the beautiful, terrifying mechanics of a star unfolding in the dark. Peeking out from the pitch-black edge of the encroaching disk, a sudden splash of colour breaks the monochrome display. Violent eruptions of dense plasma known as prominences leap from the edge, glowing with a startling, brilliant ruby-red hue. These massive loops of incandescent material stand in stark, vibrant contrast against the pristine white of the surrounding halo and the blackness of the sky. Driven by localized magnetic instabilities, these crimson fountains can arc immense distances into space before crashing back down onto the stellar surface. During totality, they appear frozen in time, looking like tiny glowing embers clinging to the rim of a blackened coal. They offer a rare, direct visual of active, churning surface dynamics, temporarily visible to the unprotected eye. Surprisingly, the overarching architecture of this celestial crown is never exactly the same from eclipse to eclipse. The star operates on a deep, internal rhythm, pulsing through a dynamic cycle of magnetic activity that spans a distinct temporal rhythm. As this internal heartbeat fluctuates, it completely redesigns the outward appearance of the surrounding halo. Spectators attempting to sketch or photograph the phenomenon must prepare for a radically different masterpiece during each celestial event. The shifting internal dynamo constantly rewires the magnetic scaffolding that holds the superheated plasma in place. Therefore, every alignment offers a highly specific, fleeting snapshot of the current magnetic mood. When this internal engine roars to its absolute peak, the resulting halo expands into a display of chaotic magnificence. During periods of maximum activity, the intense and highly tangled magnetic fields erupt uniformly across the entirety of the surface. This global outpouring of energy forces the surrounding atmosphere to balloon outward in all directions simultaneously. The visual result is a crown that appears spectacularly round, full, and fiercely symmetrical around the entire blackened disk. Bristling with dense streamers pointing radially outward like the spikes of a dandelion, It is a portrait of a star firing with maximum intensity. This uniform explosion of white light represents a period of extreme danger for satellite communications, beautifully masked as a serene celestial flower. Take a slow, deep breath in, letting the cool air ground you in your physical space, far removed from these explosive cosmic storms. As you exhale slowly, release any remaining tension, allowing the imagery of this perfectly round, glowing halo to wash over your imagination. Conversely, when the internal dynamo eventually quiets down, the surrounding architecture takes on a drastically different, almost aerodynamic profile. During minimum activity, the chaotic magnetic tangles resolve into a simpler, more organized dipole, much like a standard bar magnet. The explosive outward pressure subsides, dramatically altering how the plasma is distributed across the void. At this stage, the glowing atmosphere becomes heavily concentrated along the equator, stretching out into long, elegant sword-like streamers that pierce deep into space. Meanwhile, the polar regions are left looking surprisingly bare, adorned only with short, delicate magnetic brushes that curve gracefully away from the axis. This stretched, asymmetrical orientation gives the shadow a sleek, winged appearance, resembling a cosmic bird locked in mid-flight. Shifting our gaze from the visual structure to the light itself, this darkened event serves as a profound tool for unlocking the chemical secrets of the universe. By passing the glowing coronal light through a prism during totality, historical chemists noticed an unknown, brilliant yellow spectral line. This mysterious barcode did not match any known substance previously catalogued on our own planet. It was a shocking realization that the heavens contained entirely undocumented elements, prompting scientists to name this new gas after an ancient deity of the sun. It would take a significant amount of time before this exact element was finally isolated inside a terrestrial laboratory. Thus, a vital and abundant element in the cosmos was first discovered suspended in the ghostly halo of an eclipse star. Down on the ground, the environmental darkness created by this celestial block is frequently misunderstood by those who have never stood in its path. Despite the dramatic plunging of daylight, totality does not plunge the observer into an absolute inky void of pitch black. The ambient illumination is instead remarkably similar to the cool, soft glow of a clear night illuminated by a full moon. Notice the comforting weight of your body settling into its resting posture, safe and secure in this twilight state of relaxation. Let your awareness drift gently through this soft, silvery darkness, feeling completely at peace in the quiet shadow of the moon. If we were to look closely at the modern instruments hurled into space, none can truly replicate the sheer visual majesty of this earthly vantage point. While advanced satellites use artificial discs to block the central glare and study the atmosphere, their digital sensors cannot capture the extreme dynamic range of the human eye. The delicate overlapping layers of the halo, from its blinding inner edge to its faint, wispy outer reaches, demand direct biological observation. This astronomical event remains the exclusive natural loophole that allows humanity to stare directly at the raw atmosphere of a fusing star. Without the precise geometry of the blocking sphere, this breathtaking crown of fire would remain permanently hidden behind a wall of impenetrable radiation. It is a fleeting, extraordinary privilege of our planetary placement, offering a naked eye view into the very engine that drives our solar system. The geometry of this shadow is a sharp, converging spear that points relentlessly toward the Earth's surface across the vacuum of space. As the moon orbits, this tip of the shadow cone dances across the globe, creating a fleeting corridor where the laws of daylight are briefly suspended. It is a three-dimensional architecture of darkness, a phantom structure of non-light that exists only because of the precise alignment of three celestial spheres. Entering this dark heart feels like stepping into a hidden chamber of the universe that is usually reserved for the deep void between worlds. It is the only place on our planet where the raw, unshielded darkness of space becomes a tangible, atmospheric reality. The umbra represents the ultimate triumph of the moon's geometry over the sun's overwhelming radiation, proving that even the smallest body can silence the greatest light if its placement is perfect. Fringing the absolute darkness of the core is a much broader, softer region of filtered twilight known as the penumbra. In this expansive secondary shadow, the moon only partially encroaches upon the solar disk, allowing varying degrees of sunlight to leak past its curved horizon. The result is a gradual gradient of dimming that stretches for thousands of miles, signalling the approach of the more intense central drama. Because the sun is a broad physical disk rather than a single point of light, its rays arrive from slightly different angles, blurring the edges of the lunar obstruction. This creates a zone of transition where the world appears bathed in a strange, monochromatic light that feels neither like day nor like night. The further one moves toward the outer edge of this region, the more subtle the effect becomes, until it eventually dissolves into the standard brightness of a clear sky. Notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest as you contemplate this vast, soft veil of shadow sweeping across the continents. This structure of the penumbra acts as a cosmic herald, an immense and silent warning that the planetary alignment is reaching its peak. It is a realm of partial truths, where the sun is neither fully present nor entirely absent, creating a vast grey buffer between the blinding afternoon and the total midnight of the core. Surprisingly, the physical path carved by the umbra across the face of the Earth is a remarkably narrow and delicate ribbon of geography. While the secondary shadow may cover entire continents, the zone of total darkness rarely exceeds a width of 160 miles. This narrow corridor is the only place where the true crown of the sun can be seen, making it a highly localized and precious commodity. To stand within this tiny moving scar of darkness is to occupy a specific coordinate of cosmic perfection that is easily missed by a mere few miles. The shadow races across the landscape like a brushstroke, ignoring national borders and topographical obstacles with a silent mathematical indifference. It is a fleeting target for those who seek to experience the ultimate alignment, a narrow stage where the universe performs its most dramatic vanishing act. If we were to look closer at the map of an eclipse, the path of totality appears as a thin thread stitched onto the massive tapestry of the globe. This scarcity of space heightens the value of the experience as the vast majority of the planet remains under the softer light of the partial phase. It is a reminder of how small and specific the requirements are for total cosmic harmony to descend upon a single point on our world. If we look beyond the localized experience, we find that the grand engine of the solar system produces these alignments with surprising regularity. Somewhere on the surface of our planet, the moon's dark heart strikes the Earth roughly every 18 months. This means that total solar eclipses are not actually rare events when viewed from a global, planetary perspective. The difficulty lies not in the frequency of the event, but in the fact that the Earth is mostly covered by vast, inaccessible oceans and remote wilderness. The shadow often spends its entire journey dancing across the waves, or sweeping over the frozen desolation of the polar regions. Therefore, while the universe is consistently performing this feat, it often does so in front of an empty house of waves and ice. Notice the calm stillness of your hands as you consider the Earth as a single, rotating stage for this recurring drama. This structure of recurring shadows proves that the solar system is a rhythmic machine, pulsing with predictable regularity. We are simply passengers on a world that occasionally drifts into the path of a silent, recurring darkness that visits us more often than we might think. Deep within the records of any single city or village, a total solar eclipse is a generational event that borders on the mythical. For a fixed point on the Earth's surface, the interval between consecutive visits of the moon's dark umbra averages about 400 years. This staggering wait time means that for most civilizations, a total eclipse is a once-in-a-multitude of lifetimes phenomenon. The narrowness of the path combined with the erratic rotation of the planet creates a statistical lottery where very few locations win the prize twice in a century. Some lucky spots might see 2 eclipses in a single decade, while others languish in the sun for over a millennium without a single moment of totality. It is a game of celestial chance that defines the culture and history of the people who happen to live within the shadow's reach. If we were to look closer at the human lifespan, the rarity of a local eclipse becomes a profound anchor for our sense of time. To witness totality without travelling is to be the recipient of an ancient and improbable alignment that has been brewing for centuries. It is a cosmic appointment that was set long before the current observers were even born, making the eventual darkness feel like a personal gift from the stars. This structure of the celestial dance is occasionally altered by the varying distance between the moon and our world. Because the moon's orbit is an ellipse rather than a perfect circle, it periodically retreats to its furthest point from Earth, known as apogee. When an alignment occurs during this phase, the moon appears slightly too small to completely hide the sun's brilliant face. The result is not a total eclipse, but a stunning annular event where a thin, blinding ring of fire remains visible around the black lunar disk. This ring, or annulus, prevents the sky from darkening into totality and keeps the sun's ghostly corona hidden from view. It is a geometric near miss, a beautiful but incomplete alignment that leaves the world in a bright, eerie state of perpetual near twilight. Feel the weight of your limbs sinking into your chair, safe and still, while these massive spheres shift their distances in the vacuum above. Even in this incomplete state, the annular eclipse produces a mesmerizing visual that reminds us of the moon's shifting proximity. It is a reminder that the perfect mask of totality is a fragile result of specific, fluctuating distances that must be exactly right for the crown to appear. Because the Earth is a curved sphere rather than a flat plane, the distance between the ground and the moon changes slightly as the shadow travels. In very rare circumstances, the tip of the moon's shadow cone is perfectly calculated to just barely touch the bulging centre of the Earth. This creates a hybrid eclipse, a chameleonic event that transforms its very nature as it moves across the globe. Observers at the start or end of the path might see an annular ring of fire because the shadow tip falls just short of the surface. However, those standing at the midpoint where the Earth's curve rises up to meet the shadow experience the full glory of totality. It is a masterpiece of precision, where a few miles of planetary curvature make the absolute difference between a ring and a crown. This structure of the hybrid event is one of the rarest spectacles in the solar system, occurring only a handful of times each century. It highlights the delicate interaction between the three-dimensional shapes of the moon and our own planet. It is a cosmic tightrope walk, where the geometry of light is balanced on a knife's edge, shifting with the very shape of our world. If we were to examine the orbital paths with mathematical precision, we would discover a subtle tilt that prevents an eclipse from occurring every single month. The moon's orbit around the Earth is inclined by about 5 degrees relative to the path our planet takes around the sun. Most of the time, the moon passes slightly above or below the sun from our perspective, its shadow missing the Earth entirely and disappearing into the void. Without this specific inclination, every new moon would bring a solar eclipse and every full moon would bring a lunar one. The universe would be a much more repetitive and predictable place, and the rarity of the event would be lost to the mundane cycle of the months. This tilt acts as a celestial filter, ensuring that the perfect alignment remains a special and infrequent occasion. As you breathe deeply, imagine the invisible planes of these orbits intersecting in the vast, silent darkness of the solar system. This structure of the moon's orbit creates a complex geometry that requires 2 specific points to align before a shadow can fall. It is a deliberate-looking design that hides the eclipse until the season is exactly right for the darkness to return. Within these specific windows of orbital crossing, eclipses can only occur during 2 designated periods each year known as eclipse seasons. These seasons happen when the moon's tilted path crosses the plane of the Earth's orbit at points called nodes. Only during these brief periods of a few weeks is the alignment straight enough for a shadow to find its mark on our distant world. When the moon reaches a node during its new phase, a solar eclipse is born, often followed or preceded by a lunar eclipse at the opposite node. These windows of opportunity drift slowly through the calendar, ensuring that eclipses are not anchored to a specific month or season. They are the only times when the celestial geometry allows the three spheres to occupy a single, straight line in space. Feel the rhythm of your own breath, a steady cycle that mirrors the predictable windows of these cosmic alignments. This periodic nature of the eclipse seasons allowed early civilizations to recognize that the universe was not random, but governed by invisible recurring laws. It is a seasonal pulse of shadow that has guided human understanding of the heavens for countless millennia across the globe. Through the lens of deep time, astronomers have identified a majestic and ancient rhythm called the Saros cycle that governs the return of specific eclipses. This period, lasting roughly 18 years and 11 days, represents the moment when the Sun, Moon, and Earth return to nearly the same relative positions. An eclipse belonging to a specific Saros series will repeat its geometry almost exactly, though it will strike the Earth about a third of the way around the globe. Because of this predictable shift, it takes 3 Saros cycles, about 54 years, for a nearly identical eclipse to return to the same general region of the world. Ancient Babylonian observers used this complex mathematical pulse to predict the return of the darkness long before they understood the physics of gravity. It is a deep, underlying melody in the celestial choir, a pattern that stretches across centuries with unerring precision. This structure of the Saros cycle connects us to the astronomers of the past, who sat in the same quiet contemplation of the moving stars. It is a reminder that while each eclipse feels like a singular miracle, it is part of a vast interlocking machine of staggering longevity. We are merely observing a single beat in a heart that has been pulsing since the dawn of the solar system's creation. This pulse of the solar system's creation was first transcribed onto damp, heavy clay by the meticulous scholars of ancient Mesopotamia. Deep within the dust of Babylon, these early astronomers sat in the quiet hum of their stone observatories, documenting every shadow that crossed the moon and sun over the course of many centuries. These scribes did not merely see a random darkening. They recognized the rhythmic 18-year breath of the universe hidden in the movements of the spheres. Through the steady application of reed styluses, they built a library of astronomical prophecy that stretched across dozens of generations and dynasties. The faint scent of drying earth and ancient river silt filled the air as they calculated the inevitable return of the shadow, long before the mechanics of gravity were even a whisper in the human mind. Their records formed the first bridge between human observation and the infinite longevity of cosmic time, preserving the rhythm of the heavens on brittle tablets that survived the rise and fall of empires. Surprisingly, the heavy silence of an eclipse once held enough power to instantly dissolve the violent chaos of an ancient battlefield. In the heat of the 6th century before the Common Era, the armies of the Medes and the Lydians were locked in a brutal years-long struggle for dominance over the Anatolian landscape. Suddenly the golden afternoon was stripped away, replaced by the terrifying and unnatural twilight of a total solar obscuration that fell like a hammer. The soldiers, overwhelmed by a deep and ancestral dread, interpreted the vanishing sun as a divine command for immediate peace. Swords were lowered and hostilities ceased as the warriors stood in the cold, false night, united by a shared vulnerability before the overwhelming power of the heavens. The resulting treaty was not signed in a palace, but under the ghostly crown of the corona, proving that the geometry of space can occasionally override the territorial impulses of men and rewrite the history of nations in a single afternoon. Within the forbidden, incense-laden courts of ancient China, the role of the royal astronomer was a position of immense prestige and lethal consequence. These scholars were tasked with the constant management of the celestial calendar, as the sun was viewed as the ultimate symbol of the emperor's divine mandate to rule. A failed prediction was not merely a scientific oversight, it was perceived as a catastrophic betrayal of the cosmic order that threatened the stability of the throne. Legend speaks of two prominent astronomers, Xi and Ho, who neglected their duties and failed to announce the impending arrival of an encroaching lunar shadow. In the resulting panic of the sudden, unpredicted darkness, the state executioners were called to deliver a final terrestrial justice for their celestial negligence. Their story remains a chilling reminder of a time when the tracking of planetary bodies was a matter of life and death, conducted in the hushed, high-stakes corridors of an empire that demanded perfection from the stars. Notice the relaxation in your jaw and the steady, quiet rhythm of your own breath as you sink further into this historical journey. Across the vast expanse of the pre-colonial world, indigenous cultures wove rich and diverse tapestries of mythology to explain the sun's temporary disappearance. To some, the eclipse represented a celestial animal attempting to devour the light, requiring the entire community to create a great clamour to frighten the predator away. Others viewed the event as a moment of cosmic intimacy, or a solemn meeting between the sun and the moon that required silence and prayer. These stories were not merely explanations for a physical event, but ways to integrate the terrifying power of the heavens into the daily fabric of the tribe. Each culture found its own unique way to name the void, turning the silence of the sky into a shared narrative experience that grounded the human spirit in the face of the unknown. If we were to look closer at the age of exploration, a simple astronomical almanac once served as a powerful tool of survival and high-stakes manipulation. Stranded on the shores of Jamaica with a starving crew and increasingly hostile relations with the local population, Christopher Columbus found himself in a desperate position. Consulting his charts, he discovered that a total lunar eclipse was imminent, and he used this knowledge to stage a terrifying display of divine influence over the moon. He warned the local leaders that his god would cause the moon to rise inflamed with wrath if they did not provide the necessary supplies for his men. As the shadow of the earth began to swallow the moon, bathing it in a deep blood-red glow, the terrified onlookers surrendered their provisions in exchange for the return of the light. It was a cynical moment where the predictable mechanics of the solar system were wielded as a psychological weapon, proving that knowledge of the spheres could be as potent as any steel. The dawn of the photographic age brought a new, frustrating challenge to those who wished to capture the elusive crown of the sun. 19th century cameras relied on chemical emulsions that were agonizingly slow to react, requiring long exposures that struggled with the fleeting, dynamic nature of totality. While the human eye could see the delicate, wispy streamers of the corona, the early glass plates often returned as overexposed blurs or empty silhouettes. Photographers worked in the quiet, chemical-heavy hum of portable dark rooms, racing against the lunar clock to preserve the image of the vanished star before it returned. The intense contrast between the blinding inner corona and the faint, vanishing outer tendrils made it nearly impossible to find a balanced exposure during the brief window of darkness. This technical struggle highlighted the immense gap between the sophistication of human vision and the primitive tools initially used to document the cosmic architecture. Feel the coolness of the air around you, allowing your body to remain perfectly still while you imagine the patient labour of these early scientists. A historic breakthrough finally occurred in 1851, when the first successful daguerreotype of a solar eclipse was captured at the Royal Observatory in Königsberg. A skilled laboratory assistant named Bukowski managed to produce a sharp, detailed image of the solar corona using a small refracting telescope and immense patience. This single, silver-plated copper sheet provided the first permanent objective record of the sun's outer atmosphere, free from the biases of human illustration. It was a monumental achievement that transformed astronomy from a discipline of sketches and memories into a science based on verifiable, hard visual data. Looking at that first grainy black and white plate, humanity finally had a witness to the crown that did not rely on the fallible interpretation of the human mind. Deep within the high desert of New Mexico, a mysterious rock carving in Chaco Canyon offers a potential window into a 1,000-year-old cosmic event. Etched into a sandstone cliff, a swirling petroglyph depicts a darkened circle surrounded by tangled hair-like projections that bear a striking resemblance to a solar prominence. Modern researchers have correlated this artwork with a major total solar eclipse that would have passed directly over the ancestral Puebloan people in the 11th century. This ancient record suggests that the people of the canyon were keen observers of the heavens, integrating the terrifying beauty of totality into their sacred rocky landscape. The carving stands as a silent lithic testimony to a moment when an entire civilization stopped its daily toil to acknowledge the grand alignment occurring overhead. It connects the modern observer to a lineage of desert watchers who found profound meaning in the sudden midday darkness and the ghostly crown of the star. Surprisingly, the very foundations of Western philosophy and science are linked to a single, legendary prediction of a solar eclipse. Thales of Miletus, often cited as the first Greek philosopher, is credited with having the foresight to announce the darkening of the sun in the year 585 before the Common Era. While the exact methods he used are still a subject of historical debate, his success marked a pivot from mythological explanations to the search for natural underlying laws. By suggesting that the heavens operated on a predictable mathematical basis, Thales challenged the idea that an eclipse was a capricious whim of the gods. The quiet hum of his early mathematical inquiries paved the way for the sophisticated calculations that now allow us to map the shadow with down-to-the-second accuracy. His legacy is the realization that the universe is an understandable machine, a concept that first flickered into existence during an ancient afternoon of vanished light. As you reach the end of this historical journey, let your awareness expand to include the entire weight of your body, resting in complete harmony with the planet beneath you. These fragmented historical accounts from Babylon to the high desert serve a vital purpose beyond mere storytelling for modern geophysicists. By analysing the exact timing and location of ancient eclipses, scientists can track the subtle, long-term variations in the Earth's rotation over many thousands of years. The friction caused by ocean tides is gradually slowing the planet's spin, and these historical shadow records provide the essential data points needed to measure this deceleration. A clay tablet from a Mesopotamian library or a notation in a medieval monastery becomes a precision instrument for understanding the history of our planetary rotation. Without these human observers who stood in the quiet darkness of the past, we would have no way to calibrate the long-term clocks of our world. This silent friction within the clocks of our world originates from the relentless tug of the moon upon the Earth's vast oceans. As the planet spins, the tidal bulges created by this gravitational pull act as a microscopic cosmic brake against the seabed. This interaction causes the rotation of our massive rocky home to gradually lose its momentum over the eons. The slowing is nearly imperceptible to a single human life, yet it remains a fundamental truth of our existence in the solar system. Every century the day lengthens by just a fraction of a second, as the planet's kinetic energy is converted into heat. This invisible resistance creates a persistent drag that has altered the length of a single day from a mere 6 hours in the distant past to the 24 hours we recognize now. It is a graceful, slow-motion decay of movement that anchors our world to its satellite. This deep internal rhythm dictates the long-term history of our world, ensuring that the timekeepers of the future will look upon a slightly slower world than the one we inhabit today. It is a reminder that the very ground beneath us is part of a larger decelerating machine. As the planetary rotation gradually yields to these oceanic anchors, a fascinating exchange of energy occurs across the vacuum of space. The rotational energy lost by the Earth does not simply vanish. Instead, it is transferred to the Moon through the invisible threads of gravitational interaction. This boost in energy causes our lunar companion to slowly but steadily spiral outward, moving further away from its parent world. Every year, the distance between us increases by roughly 4 centimeters, a distance no wider than a small coin. This outward migration is a silent, constant departure that has been occurring since the Moon's birth billions of years ago. It reflects the dynamic and ever-changing nature of the celestial bond between our two worlds. This drift is measurable by reflecting lasers off mirrors left on the lunar surface, providing a constant stream of data that confirms our growing separation. It is a poignant reminder that the celestial dance is a long, slow goodbye. Over millions of years, this tiny annual drift accumulates into a staggering shift in the architecture of our local cosmos. Deep within the far reaches of the future, this outward migration will eventually lead to the disappearance of the total solar eclipse from our sky. In roughly 600 million years, the moon will have drifted so far that its apparent size will no longer be sufficient to completely cover the sun's face. Even during a perfect alignment, the lunar disk will appear too small to extinguish the blinding photosphere. The era of the ghostly corona and the sudden midnight of totality will have reached its final permanent sunset. Future inhabitants of this planet will only witness annular eclipses, where a permanent ring of fire surrounds the moon's silhouette. The spectacular, perfect overlap that we cherish today is a temporary feature of our solar system's specific age. It is a sobering thought that the most beautiful celestial event we know is a finite resource, destined to fade into the annals of deep time. We occupy a specific window of cosmic history that is uniquely defined by this perfect mask of light. Our descendants will look at ancient records of totality with the same wonder we reserve for the birth of stars. Surprisingly, the universe has positioned our brief human existence within a truly privileged epoch of Earth's long history. We are the fortunate witnesses of a cosmic sweet spot, a golden age where the sizes and distances of the sun and moon align with mathematical perfection. For the vast majority of our planet's past and its inevitable future, this perfect visual match simply did not exist or will have vanished. Feel the rhythmic pulse of your own heart as you consider how rare it is to exist at the precise moment when such beauty is visible. This alignment is not a permanent law of the galaxy, but a fleeting coincidence of timing and spatial geometry. It underscores the unique nature of our vantage point, suggesting that we inhabit a world of special, temporary wonders. This structure of the racing shadow is governed by a complex interaction between orbital speeds and the rotation of the Earth beneath it. The speed at which the moon's dark heart travels across the landscape is not a fixed constant, but varies dramatically based on the observer's latitude. Because the Earth is wider at its centre, a person standing at the equator is spinning through space much faster than someone near the poles. This terrestrial movement acts as a counterbalance to the moon's orbital velocity, effectively slowing the shadow's progress relative to the ground. Conversely, as one moves toward the higher latitudes, the surface rotation slows down, and the relative speed of the shadow appears to accelerate. It is a silent race between the spinning globe and the falling darkness, creating a path of totality that behaves like a living, shifting entity. The experience of the eclipse is thus fundamentally shaped by the specific curve of the world on which we stand. Each observer feels a different tempo of totality, dictated by their distance from the planet's spinning heart. It is a geographic lottery where the ground itself determines the speed of the encroaching night. If we were to look closer at the equator, we would find the lunar shadow moving at its most leisurely terrestrial pace. Even at this minimum speed, the darkness sweeps across the tropical landscapes at well over 1,000 miles per hour. This is significantly faster than any commercial jetliner can fly, making it impossible for most humans to keep pace with the onset of totality. The vastness of the planet's girth at this latitude provides the maximum possible rotational velocity, which helps to subtract from the moon's true speed in space. For those standing in the path near the centre of the world, the shadow approaches with a heavy, unstoppable finality that feels ancient and immense. The relative slowness here allows for a slightly more prolonged experience of the sun's disappearance compared to the frantic sprint seen elsewhere. It is a majestic, high-speed transit that remains completely silent, a ghost ship sailing over the canopy of the world. The shadow's passage is a reminder that even at our fastest, we are motionless spectators to the momentum of the heavens. At the equator, the universe grants us the longest possible gaze into the heart of the shadow. Near the desolate silence of the poles, the mechanics of the shadow undergo a dramatic and terrifying transformation. Because the Earth's surface is curved away from the moon at these extreme latitudes, the shadow hits the ground at a very shallow, oblique angle. This causes the dark umbra to stretch out into a long, distorted oval that races across the ice and snow with incredible ferocity. Notice the stillness in your hands and the warmth of your breath as you imagine this streak of night tearing through the Arctic air. At these high latitudes, the shadow can reach speeds exceeding 5,000 miles per hour, appearing as a blurred wall of darkness that consumes the horizon in a heartbeat. The rotation of the Earth provides little resistance to this polar sprint, allowing the orbital mechanics of the moon to dominate the landscape. To witness an eclipse in these regions is to see the absolute raw power of cosmic movement unleashed across a frozen world. The shadow does not merely fall, it strikes with the speed of a projectile, leaving the observer breathless in its wake. It is a violent and beautiful display of geometry meeting the extreme edges of our planet. The rhythmic, silent spinning of these vast spheres occasionally produces a perfect alignment that pushes the limits of time. Under the most ideal conditions, when the Earth is furthest from the Sun and the Moon is at its closest point to our world, the duration of totality reaches its maximum. This peak moment of darkness can last for just over 7.5 minutes, a rare and exquisite window of midday stars. Such a prolonged eclipse requires the observer to be positioned near the equator, where the shadow's relative speed is at its lowest. These extended periods of totality are the crown jewels of the Saros cycle, occurring only a few times in a millennium. For most observers, a few minutes is all they receive, making these 7-minute wonders legendary in the history of astronomy. They represent the absolute limit of what the current geometry of our solar system can provide to those standing on the ground. Every second of that duration is a gift of perfect timing, a brief suspension of the ordinary laws of daylight. It is the pinnacle of the eclipse experience, a moment of stillness that feels as though it could last forever. Surprisingly, human ingenuity once attempted to outrun the very laws of orbital motion to extend the experience of the shadow. In the early 1970s, a group of dedicated scientists boarded a specialized Concorde supersonic jet to chase a total eclipse across the continent of Africa. By flying at twice the speed of sound along the path of totality, the aircraft was able to stay within the moon's dark umbra for an unprecedented amount of time. While observers on the ground saw only a few minutes of darkness, the researchers in the cabin experienced over 70 minutes of total solar eclipse. The high-altitude flight offered a pristine, stable platform to study the corona without the interference of the lower atmosphere. It was a historic intersection of cutting-edge technology and ancient celestial patterns, proving that for a brief moment, humans could transcend their stationary terrestrial existence. This mission remains the longest single observation of totality in the history of our species, a triumph of the spirit over time. It showed that with enough speed, we could make a fleeting celestial moment into a sustained journey through the dark. It is a testament to the human desire to linger in the presence of the extraordinary. Calculating the final boundaries of this darkness requires a level of precision that must account for the rugged, uneven nature of the lunar landscape. The shadow cast by the moon is not a perfect, smooth-edged circle, because the moon itself is a world of towering peaks and deep, jagged basins. Every valley on the lunar limb allows a tiny additional sliver of sunlight to pass through, effectively shifting the exact edge of the shadow on the Earth's surface. To predict the path of totality with absolute accuracy, modern astronomers must use highly detailed topographical maps of the moon. Let your mind rest in the vastness of this complexity, appreciating how even the smallest crater can influence where the darkness will fall. This level of detail ensures that those standing at the very edge of the path know precisely whether they will be bathed in the corona or left in the partial light. It is a final, intricate detail that links the distant mountains of the moon to the specific patches of grass under our feet. The shadow we experience is a direct projection of a landscape 250,000 miles away, rendered in darkness. In this way, the moon's rugged history is etched onto the Earth during every moment of totality. Etched into the very genetic blueprints of terrestrial life, the arrival of this midday shadow triggers a frantic, microscopic deconstruction of the world. Among the most diligent observers of the light are the orb-weaving spiders, whose lives are governed by the precise rhythms of the rising and setting sun. As the silver twilight of the partial eclipse deepens, these arachnids receive a chemical signal that the day has prematurely ended, prompting a sudden and systematic retreat. With an eerie, mechanical focus, they begin to dismantle the intricate silken masterpieces they spent the dawn hours constructing. They consume the protein-rich strands of their own webs, clearing the forest of their invisible traps in preparation for a night they believe has arrived hours ahead of schedule. This frantic labour is a visceral reaction to the loss of solar stimulus, a desperate attempt to conserve resources before the supposed long dark. When the sun finally re-emerges moments later, these creatures find themselves in a state of profound biological disorientation, standing upon empty anchor lines in the bright afternoon. They are forced to restart the grueling process of web building, their internal clock shattered by the moon's brief interference. It is a stark demonstration of how the celestial machinery overhead can physically unravel the daily architecture of the small and the silent. This drive for shelter and safety ripples through the pastoral landscapes as the ambient light takes on its strange metallic quality. Farm animals such as horses, cattle, and sheep possess a deeply ingrained social hierarchy that relies on the sun as a primary navigational and chronological anchor. As the shadow approaches, a collective impulse takes hold of the herd, overriding their grazing instincts and turning their focus toward the security of the barn. They move with a solemn, purposeful stride, forming orderly lines that mimic their usual evening procession back to the stable or the milking parlour. The sudden drop in temperature and the fading spectrum of light act as a physical weight, pressing upon their senses and signalling that the time for foraging has passed. They ignore the fresh grass beneath their hooves, driven by an ancestral need to find cover before the total disappearance of the sun. Farmers often report a heavy, expectant atmosphere in the fields, as the rhythmic lowing of cattle and the whinnying of horses fill the cooling air. This mass migration toward the hearth is a testament to the power of the circadian clock, which persists even when the external world behaves in an impossible manner. Within the safety of the wooden stalls, the animals huddle together, waiting for a dawn that will arrive with startling, confusing speed. Surprisingly, the swamp and the dense undergrowth begin to vibrate with the hum of creatures that usually wait for the protection of a true dusk. As the illumination levels plummet to a mere fraction of their normal intensity, the biological sensors of mosquitoes and other nocturnal insects are violently activated. These blood-seekers and nectar-gatherers perceive the cooling, darkened air as an invitation to begin their nightly hunt, emerging from their daytime hiding spots in swarms. The sudden influx of these winged predators creates a localized ecological shift, catching humans and diurnal animals completely off guard in the middle of a clear day. The air, which moments ago was filled with the song of the cicada, now carries the high-pitched, insistent whine of a night that isn't supposed to be. These insects are entirely fooled by the lunar mask, operating on a simplified logic that equates darkness with the freedom to feed. Their activity is frenetic and short-lived, a burst of predatory energy triggered by a celestial glitch that they cannot comprehend. When the first sliver of the sun returns, they are forced into a panicked retreat, diving back into the shadows to avoid the returning heat. It is a brief, intense occupation of the day by the forces of the night, sparked by the cooling breath of the moon. If we were to look closer at the botanical world, we would find that the absence of a brain does not prevent a profound reaction to the vanishing light. Certain species of flowers, particularly those that exhibit nyctinosty, possess specialized cells at the base of their petals that respond to the intensity of solar radiation. As the eclipse nears totality, these blossoms begin to fold inward, systematically sealing themselves shut as if the Earth had completed a full rotation. Notice the rhythmic expansion of your lungs and the steady pulse in your fingertips as you imagine these thousands of petals closing in a silent, coordinated wave across the meadows. This mechanical response is a protective measure designed to safeguard the delicate reproductive organs from the cooling dampness of a typical night. The plants are effectively holding their breath, retreating into a dormant state in response to the missing photons that usually drive their metabolism. When the brilliance of the sun returns, the flowers must expend significant energy to reopen, a process that is normally spread across many hours of a gradual dawn. This rapid cycling of their physical form is a taxing event, a biological tax levied by the passing shadow of the moon. It highlights the invisible thread of light that connects the most stationary life on our planet to the movements of the distant burning stars. The dark silhouettes of the forest canopy are suddenly broken by the erratic, leather-winged flight of bats emerging from their hollows. These masters of echolocation are highly sensitive to the specific light thresholds that define the boundary between the sleeping world and the active one. As the moon erases the sun, the sky reaches a level of dimness that matches their nightly awakening, triggering an immediate and widespread exodus from their daytime roosts. They dive and weave through the false twilight, their sonar pings cutting through the unnatural silence that has claimed the birds of the day. This midday emergence is a spectacular sight, as thousands of individuals may pour from caves and bridge crevices in a chaotic, swirling cloud of dark fur. They search for the insects that have also been tricked into flight, engaging in a brief and confusing feast under the light of the solar corona. This predatory shift represents a total inversion of the forest's standard operating procedure, where the hunters of the night seize a moment of cosmic opportunity. Their flight is urgent and bewildered, as the atmospheric pressure and light levels fluctuate with a speed they have never encountered. It is a moment of raw biological opportunism, proving that even the most specialized creatures are at the mercy of the orbital dance. Deep within the light-starved depths of the sea, the passing of the shadow triggers a massive vertical displacement of life that usually takes hours to complete. Millions of tiny organisms known as zooplankton spend their days in the dark, cold safety of the deep ocean to avoid being seen by predators in the sunlit surface layers. When the eclipse begins to dim the waters above, these microscopic travelers interpret the fading glow as the signal for their nightly ascent to the surface to feed. This upward migration is one of the largest movements of biomass on the planet, and during an eclipse, it happens with a frantic, compressed urgency. The organisms rise through the water column in a vast invisible wave, responding to the rapid decay of light that usually accompanies a slow sunset. It is a biological echo of the moon's shadow, a rising tide of life meeting the falling curtain of darkness in the brine. Fishermen and marine biologists have recorded these sudden shifts using sonar, watching as the scattering layers of the ocean floor leap toward the surface in the middle of the day. The entire food web of the sea is momentarily rearranged, with larger fish following the plankton upward into the cooling, darkened waters. It is a profound reminder that the reach of the moon's shadow extends far beneath the waves, touching the hidden heart of our planet's largest ecosystem. This heavy displacement of natural behaviour is perhaps most dramatic in the riverbanks of Africa, where the hippopotamus reigns over the cooling waters. These massive territorial mammals typically spend the heat of the day submerged in the river to protect their sensitive skin from the punishing solar radiation. As the eclipse plunges the savanna into twilight, these giants perceive the drop in light and temperature as the arrival of their evening grazing period. Feel the weight of your body as it rests, heavy and secure, while you imagine these 3-ton beasts rising from the silted depths of the riverbed. They clamber onto the muddy banks with a powerful, lumbering intensity, preparing to travel miles inland to feed on the lush grasses of the plains. This premature exit from the water puts them on a collision course with the returning sun, which will soon catch them far from the safety of their aquatic sanctuary. The confusion that follows is a dangerous time for both the animals and any observers nearby, as the hippos find themselves exposed to the sudden, harsh glare of the reappearing star. They are forced to turn back in a state of high agitation, their skin vulnerable and their territorial instincts flared by the cosmic trickery. It is a stunning display of how a few minutes of darkness can mobilize thousands of pounds of muscle and bone in a frantic, unintended migration. Closer to the hearth, the domestic companions that share our homes offer a different perspective on the celestial event. Unlike their wild counterparts, domestic dogs and cats frequently seem largely indifferent to the visual transformation of the sky, though they are not entirely immune to the atmospheric shift. Some may exhibit signs of mild confusion, pacing near their food bowls or looking toward their owners for a signal that it is time for the evening meal. Their reactions are often more a reflection of the human excitement surrounding them than a direct response to the eclipse itself. However, the sudden cooling of the air and the eerie, silvery quality of the light can cause even the most relaxed house cat to pause and sharpen its gaze toward the windows. They possess a heightened sensitivity to the static electricity and barometric changes that often accompany the passing of the moon's shadow, resulting in a subtle, nervous energy. While they do not flee or hide in the way wild animals do, their sudden alertness serves as a bridge between our technological world and the raw instincts of the wild. They provide a grounding presence for the human observer, a reminder that the world remains familiar even when the sun has been replaced by a hole in the sky. Their quiet, questioning look suggests that while they sense a change, they trust in the stability of the environment we have built for them. The sky becomes a perilous void for the honeybee, whose entire navigational system is built upon the position and polarized light of the sun. As the moon aggressively carves away at the solar disk, the internal compass of these tireless workers begins to spin wildly and fail. Without the constant, reliable reference point of the sun, the bees lose their ability to triangulate their position relative to the hive, leading to a state of aerial paralysis. They have been observed to stop flying entirely as totality approaches, literally dropping from the air or hunkering down on the nearest branch or flower. This huddling behavior is a survival mechanism, a refusal to risk getting lost in a world where the primary lighthouse has been extinguished. The vibrant, busy hum of the meadow is replaced by a heavy silence as thousands of foragers wait in a state of suspended animation for the light to be restored. This sudden grounding of the insect workforce is one of the most visible and quietest disruptions caused by the eclipse. It highlights the absolute dependence of life on the predictable geometry of the solar system for the simplest of tasks, such as finding the way home. In that moment of darkness, the bees are stranded in a foreign landscape, their ancient technology rendered useless by a passing shadow. This cosmic glitch provides a rare and precious laboratory for scientists who study the deep, internal clocks that govern all life on Earth. Researchers deploy microphones, cameras, and GPS trackers across the path of totality to capture every nuance of this mass biological confusion. They are looking for the dead zones, where the circadian rhythm is most easily shattered, revealing the hidden mechanisms that link genes to the rising of the sun. Allow your breathing to settle into a deep, effortless rhythm, reflecting the ancient patterns that these scientists are working so hard to understand. By observing which animals succumb to the false night and which remain resilient, they can map the evolutionary history of light sensitivity. The eclipse is a stress test for the planet, a high-speed experiment that would be impossible to replicate in any artificial setting. Every recording of a confused bird or a dismantling spider adds a page to the manual of life's interaction with the cosmos. It is a reminder that we are not separate from the movements of the spheres, but are instead deeply integrated into the very fabric of their timing. In the quiet after the shadow has passed, the data gathered remains a lasting legacy of the few minutes when the world forgot how to be day. Emerging from that quiet legacy where the world forgot the day, we enter a realm where the shadow becomes a precision tool for the human mind. In the early 20th century, the British astronomer Arthur Eddington led a daring expedition to the remote island of Principe, carrying heavy glass plates to capture the stars during a total solar eclipse. He sought to test a radical new framework for the universe, one that proposed that space itself was not a static stage but a flexible, warping fabric that responded to the presence of mass. This was the first empirical challenge to centuries of Newtonian physics, a high-stakes gamble played out in the brief, precious minutes of totality. Under the deep indigo of the false night, the alignment provided the only natural opportunity to witness stars that were visually close to the solar edge without being drowned out by glare. These resulting images were the first clues to a reality far more strange and dynamic than anyone had previously imagined, turning the quiet of the shadow into a laboratory for the fundamental laws of existence. If we were to look closer at the fragile glass negatives developed in those remote field observatories, a startling truth about the nature of space-time begins to reveal itself. The stars on the plates appeared slightly displaced from their known charted positions, pushed outward by a fraction of a millimeter by the sun's presence. This displacement was not a flaw in the equipment or a mistake in development, but a direct visual proof that the sun's immense gravity had physically bent the starlight as it raced past. Light, which we think of as the ultimate straight line, was revealed to be a traveller following the invisible slopes and valleys of a warped universe. This observation proved that gravity is an inherent property of space's shape, rather than a simple pulling force between distant objects. It was a moment of profound clarity, where the beauty of the eclipse anchored the most complex physics in our history, forever changing our perspective on the cosmos. This structure of scientific proof acted as a sudden global catalyst, transforming a quiet theorist into a figure of unprecedented international fame. When the results of the expedition were announced to the world, the headlines did not merely speak of an eclipse, but of the dramatic overthrow of the old laws of the universe. Albert Einstein, whose mathematical genius had predicted this exact bending of light, was propelled into the spotlight of celebrity almost overnight. People across the globe were fascinated by the notion that the fundamental rules of reality had been rewritten while the moon hid the sun. The eclipse served as the perfect theatrical stage for this intellectual shift, making the deep paradoxes of physics feel tangible and real to everyone who watched. Einstein's name became synonymous with the word genius, forever linking his legacy to the fleeting darkness of the lunar shadow that allowed his theories to shine. Surprisingly, the universe hides its chemical ingredients within the very light we take for granted, waiting for the shadow to reveal its code. When astronomers aim spectroscopes at the ghostly crown of the corona, they're essentially reading a barcode of the star's atmospheric layers. This instrument breaks the faint glow into specific wavelengths, revealing the fingerprints of elements like hydrogen and helium that fuel the solar engine. As you rest here, notice the feeling of your weight pressing gently into the surface beneath you, completely grounded and still. This analysis has allowed us to map the solar furnace with incredible precision, identifying the gaseous fuels burning hundreds of millions of miles away. Each spectral line captured in the dark is a piece of a puzzle, explaining how stars are born, live, and eventually fade into the night. Deep within the history of these spectral readings lies the enduring mystery of an element that once seemed to exist only in the heavens. Early observers noticed a vibrant emerald green line in the corona's spectrum that refused to match any element found on the periodic table of Earth. This led scientists to propose the existence of coronium, a mysterious substance thought to be unique to the Sun's outer atmosphere. This extreme ionization could only happen at temperatures exceeding 1,000,000 degrees, a fact that initially baffled the scientific community and challenged their understanding of heat. It proved that the corona was paradoxically much hotter than the solar surface, a discovery that remains one of the most intense and fascinating areas of study in modern astrophysics. The ghost of coronium was eventually laid to rest, but the reality it revealed was far more incredible than any new element. Standing at the extreme edge of the moon's dark silhouette, we might witness the raw, eruptive power of a living star in its most active state. Solar flares and coronal mass ejections, which are colossal explosions of plasma and magnetic energy, are often visible as ruby-red plumes during the height of totality. These events represent the sun's most violent tantrums, launching billions of tons of superheated matter into the cold vacuum of space at millions of miles per hour. Seeing these eruptions in real time is a visceral reminder that our sun is not a static object but a churning magnetic powerhouse. These flares are the source of the solar wind and the triggers for the beautiful auroras that dance at our poles during periods of high solar activity. During an eclipse, the moon provides a rare window to see these eruptions as they happen, stripped of the glare that normally masks their fury. This intricate web of eruptive energy fuels a constant, invisible stream of charged particles that bathes the entire solar system in a relentless wind. Modern scientists use the unique conditions of an eclipse to deploy sophisticated ground-based instruments that study the acceleration and temperature of this solar wind as it escapes the corona. By capturing the light of the inner atmosphere, researchers can map the flow of electrons and protons that will eventually collide with the Earth's magnetic shield. Notice the gentle, cool air as it touches your skin, a soft reminder of the delicate atmosphere that protects us from these cosmic currents. Totality offers a pristine view of the inner corona that even advanced space-based telescopes struggle to replicate due to their own internal light scattering. The data gathered during these few minutes of darkness is essential for building better models of the sun's influence on the entire planetary neighbourhood. Beyond the narrow range of the visible spectrum, the sun speaks in a deep language of radio waves that can only be fully deciphered when the moon acts as a silent shield. Radio astronomers use the sharp, advancing edge of the moon during an eclipse to create high-resolution maps of active regions on the solar surface. As the lunar disk slowly covers and then uncovers different parts of the star, it allows telescopes to pinpoint the exact location of radio-bright magnetic storms. These radio maps are essential for identifying the routes of solar flares long before they erupt into view and threaten our technology. By listening to the sun during the quiet of the eclipse, scientists can track the movement of plasma and the twisting of magnetic fields deep within the solar atmosphere. It is an electronic eavesdropping on the sun's internal machinery, performed while the rest of the world stands in visual awe of the darkened sky. It is a remarkable truth that the sudden disappearance of the sun affects not just the ground below, but the very edges of our atmosphere where the Earth meets the void. The loss of intense solar radiation during totality causes the ionosphere, a high-altitude layer of charged particles, to briefly thin and change its electrical density. This shift happens with startling speed, causing long-distance radio waves and GPS signals to behave in unpredictable ways as they pass through the altered air. As you continue to relax, let your mind drift into the stillness of this high-altitude shadow, feeling perfectly safe and secure in your resting space. This brief atmospheric ripple provides a unique laboratory for scientists to study how the upper atmosphere responds to sudden changes in solar input without the usual interference. The event shows us that even our invisible technological systems are deeply connected to the steady, reliable rhythm of the light that comes from above. Within every bit of data gathered from a modern eclipse, we find a critical line of defense against the potential chaos of extreme space weather. Every observation helps scientists refine their understanding of the sun's magnetic activity, which is the primary driver behind the massive solar storms that threaten our electrical grids. A large coronal mass ejection hitting the planet could induce immense currents that fry power transformers and cause global blackouts lasting for months. The quiet study of the eclipsed sun is, therefore, a vital part of protecting our modern way of life from the unpredictable power of our star. The measurements taken during those few minutes of darkness help us prepare for a perfect storm that could otherwise disrupt the world for years. It is the ultimate synthesis of wonder and utility, where the beauty of the shadow helps us maintain the light of our civilization across the globe. This global synthesis of wonder draws a unique tribe of wanderers toward the ephemeral boundary of the moon's reach. Known as umbrophiles, or lovers of the shadow, these individuals find their life's purpose in the few fleeting minutes where the sun is extinguished. They are not merely casual observers or weekend tourists. They are dedicated pilgrims who treat each total alignment as a sacred appointment with the mechanics of the universe. For them, the sensation of totality is an addictive experience that demands constant repetition, leading them to travel to the most remote and inhospitable corners of our planet. They might find themselves perched on the frozen tundras of the high north, standing on the blinding salt flats of distant deserts, or rolling in the middle of a vast ocean on a specialized expedition ship. Each journey is a testament to the magnetic pull of the lunar shadow, a force that compels them to cross borders and brave significant hardships for a single glimpse of the crown. Standing in the path of the shadow, they share a silent language of anticipation that transcends their individual backgrounds and languages. Their lives are often measured in the total durations of darkness they have successfully witnessed, a personal tally of cosmic encounters etched into their memories. In the quiet minutes before the shadow arrives, their focus is absolute, a singular devotion to the rare and beautiful geometry unfolding in the sky above. Surprisingly, the lives of these enthusiasts are often calibrated to the ticking of a celestial clock that stretches far beyond the mundane cycles of a standard calendar. They do not plan their excursions in simple weeks or months, but in years and sometimes decades of meticulous, forward-looking preparation. Before the rest of the world has even noticed an upcoming alignment, these chasers have already mapped the path and identified the perfect vantage points. They study decades of historical weather patterns and topographical charts, seeking out the specific coordinates where the probability of a clear sky is at its statistical highest. Hotel rooms in tiny obscure villages are often booked years in advance, long before the local population understands the significance of the date on which the world will turn to night. This long-term dedication represents a profound intersection between human patience and the cold, unyielding precision of orbital mechanics. As you rest in this moment, let your mind drift into the vast timeline of these calculations, feeling the steady weight of years passing in silent anticipation. The chaser lives in a state of perpetual countdown, their eyes always fixed on a future point where the sun and moon will eventually meet. It is a life organized around the rare moments of perfection, proving that the most profound experiences are often those that require the longest wait. The most formidable adversary in this pursuit is not the vastness of the journey or the difficulty of the terrain, but the simple, drifting moisture of our own atmosphere. Cloud cover remains the ultimate enemy of the eclipse chaser, a chaotic and unpredictable veil that can instantly erase years of planning and thousands of miles of travel. A single stray cumulus formation at the wrong moment can turn a life-altering experience into a frustrating exercise in ambient dimming. This persistent threat leads to the high-stakes, frantic phenomenon of last-minute relocation, where chasers monitor satellite feeds with an intensity bordering on the desperate. If the horizon begins to thicken with grey, the quiet anticipation of the open field is replaced by the roar of engines and the frantic consultation of navigation maps. Entire caravans of enthusiasts have been known to race across state lines or speed down desert highways, chasing a single hole of clear blue sky. This desperate pursuit of the light creates a unique tension that defines the final hours before the shadow arrives. The silence of the landscape is often punctuated by the nervous tapping on phone screens and the low murmur of professional weather consultations. Every chaser knows that they are ultimately at the mercy of the wind, a humbling realization that even our greatest technologies cannot control the shifting moods of the sky. Notice the steady, calm rhythm of your breathing as you settle into the profound weight of this anticipation, feeling your body sink deeper into a state of quiet focus. Witnessing the total obscuration of the sun is frequently described not as a mere visual event, but as a deeply emotional and life-altering transformation. It is a moment where the scale of the human experience is suddenly and violently expanded to encompass the entire architecture of the solar system. Many who have stood in the shadow report a sensation of ego dissolution, where their individual concerns are momentarily swallowed by the vastness of the cosmos. The sudden disappearance of the light acts as a psychological reset, stripping away the layers of daily life to reveal a core of primal wonder. It is an experience that lingers in the soul for years, often serving as a permanent marker between who a person was before and who they became after. This emotional gravity is difficult to articulate to those who have remained in the partial light, as it defies the standard vocabulary of sight. It is a physical feeling of being part of a larger moving whole, a visceral encounter with the sublime. The shadow does not just fall on the ground, it falls on the heart, leaving a lasting impression of the universe's immense and silent beauty. This structure of overwhelming awe manifests in a diverse and unpredictable symphony of human expression as the final sliver of the sun vanishes into the moon's embrace. At the moment of totality, the silence of the field is often broken by a spontaneous collective gasp that ripples through the crowd like a physical wave. Some individuals find themselves weeping uncontrollably, overwhelmed by a sudden and intense gratitude for the sheer existence of such beauty. As you continue to relax, imagine the sound of these diverse voices fading into the heavy, velvet quiet of the shadow. This range of reactions highlights the deep, ancestral connection we maintain with the light of our star. In that brief window of darkness, the social barriers of adulthood are stripped away, leaving behind the raw, uninhibited wonder of a child. Deep within the microclimates created by the cooling air, a strange and helpful phenomenon sometimes unfolds just as the shadow arrives. As the moon aggressively blocks the sun's thermal energy, the sudden drop in temperature can alter the local atmospheric dynamics in a way that favours the observer. This localised cooling often causes the air to sink, which can lead to the rapid dissipation of low-level cumulus clouds just as totality begins. This phenomenon, sometimes referred to as the eclipse wind or the clearing of the veil, has saved countless expeditions from the brink of total failure. The very shadow that creates the darkness also helps to clean the atmospheric window through which the corona is viewed. It is as if the universe is deliberately tidying the stage before the main performance begins, removing the moisture that would otherwise block the view. Watching a thick bank of clouds melt away in the final minutes is an experience of pure, heart-stopping relief for the dedicated chaser. It adds a layer of providential drama to the event, reinforcing the feeling that the alignment is a moment of special grace. This thermal interaction proves that the eclipse is a comprehensive atmospheric event, influencing the very air we breathe as much as the light we see. If we were to examine the tools of the modern observer, we find that capturing this fleeting miracle requires a delicate balance of extreme protection and technical precision. Photographing the sun, even during its partial phases, is a dangerous endeavour for delicate digital sensors and high-quality glass lenses. Without the use of specialised solar filters, the concentrated rays of the sun act like a magnifying glass, physically melting internal components and burning camera sensors in a matter of seconds. This technical dance requires practice and steady hands, as the window for error is measured in mere heartbeats. The photographer must transition instantly from protecting their gear to exposing it to the most elusive light in the solar system. It is a ritual of precision that bridges the gap between the raw power of the star and the human desire to preserve its image forever. The very light that reveals the universe's most profound beauty possesses the terrifying power to permanently erase our ability to perceive it. Looking directly at any part of the sun during the partial phases of an eclipse, even for a few seconds, can cause irreversible retinal damage. The eye's lens focuses the solar energy onto the macula with such intensity that it literally sears the light-sensitive cells, often without the person feeling any immediate pain. This danger necessitates the use of certified eclipse glasses, which are thousands of times darker than standard sunglasses and meet strict international safety standards. These simple cardboard frame tools allow the observer to watch the moon carve its way across the sun in complete safety. They are the essential gateway to the experience, providing a protected window into a phenomenon that would otherwise be too bright to endure. Feel the gentle darkness behind your closed eyes, appreciating the gift of sight and the importance of its preservation. The transition to totality is the only moment when these filters can be safely removed, offering a naked-eye view of the crown. This cycle of protection and revelation serves as a constant reminder of the sun's overwhelming power and our own physical fragility. This structure of safe observation often returns to the most fundamental principles of physics, bypassing high-tech lenses for the elegant simplicity of a projected image. Pinhole projectors, which can be as simple as a small hole in a piece of cardboard or the gaps between the fingers of a crossed hand, offer a beautiful, indirect way to watch the celestial progress. By allowing a tiny beam of sunlight to pass through a small aperture, the shape of the eclipsed sun is projected onto a secondary surface. This method allows large groups of people to watch the crescent sun together without the need for individual eyewear. During the height of the partial phase, even the shadows cast by the leaves of a tree act as thousands of natural pinhole cameras. The ground becomes blanketed in a carpet of shimmering, dancing crescents, a terrestrial echo of the drama occurring in the sky. The shared experience of this cosmic alignment creates a momentary and profound bridge across the vast divides of human culture, politics, and geography. In the path of totality, strangers from completely different walks of life find themselves standing shoulder to shoulder, united by a singular, overwhelming focus. The usual barriers of social status and national identity are temporarily dissolved in the cold, silver light of the moon shadow. It is common for absolute strangers to find themselves hugging, crying, or cheering together as the sun is replaced by the black hole of the moon. This collective experience of awe fosters a deep sense of human unity, a reminder that we are all passengers on the same small planet. For a few minutes, the entire world seems to stop its internal conflicts to acknowledge a power far greater than any earthly concern. As you reach the end of this stage of the journey, let this feeling of connection wash over you, bringing a sense of peace and belonging. The eclipse is a global event that reminds us of our shared heritage as watchers of the sky. In the quiet that follows the return of the sun, that sense of unity remains as a lingering warmth, a testament to the beauty of our shared existence in the cosmos. This lingering warmth of our shared existence extends far beyond the blue horizon of our home, reaching into the deep, cold expanses of the solar system. While we often feel the spectacle of totality belongs solely to our terrestrial experience, the physics of alignment are a universal constant across the void. Every world with a satellite and a parent star participates in this grand, rhythmic game of shadows that defines the fundamental mechanics of the galaxy. From the gas giants of the outer rim to the rocky sentinels near the sun, the choreography of light and obstruction plays out in countless variations. Some worlds witness fleeting, jagged transits of irregular moons, while others endure massive, sweeping nights that last for hours across their thick atmospheres. Earth is merely one stage in a vast interplanetary theatre, where the lights are constantly being extinguished and relit by the clockwork of gravity. The mechanics of the shadow are woven into the very fabric of orbital life, reminding us that the geometry of the void is consistent and impartial. Our earthly eclipse is a specific, beautiful instance of a phenomenon that occurs wherever spheres dance in the dark. It is a unifying principle of the cosmos, suggesting that the beauty we witness is a shared reality of the entire planetary neighbourhood. Surprisingly, the most active stage for these shadow plays is found at the heart of the Jovian system, where the king of planets reigns with a massive entourage. Jupiter experiences a constant and complex succession of eclipses due to its minimal axial tilt and the crowded, synchronized orbits of its 4 largest moons. These icy and volcanic worlds cross the face of the Sun with a frequency that makes totality a common occurrence on the gas giant. Because Jupiter's rotation is nearly perpendicular to its orbit, its moons frequently find themselves in the perfect position to cast their dark footprints across the colourful clouds. On any given day, a spectator floating in the Jovian atmosphere might witness multiple shadows racing across the landscape simultaneously. These events are not rare miracles for the giant world, but a steady rhythmic part of the planet's daily existence. This structure of frequent alignments provides a relentless pulse of shadow that defines the light environment of that distant world. The Galilean moons act as a synchronized set of shutters, constantly flickering the solar light across thousands of miles of gaseous terrain. It is a world of eternal overlapping eclipses, a masterpiece of orbital density and gravitational precision that operates without a single moment of pause. If we shift our gaze to the rusted plains of the red planet, the experience of a solar obstruction takes on a much more jagged and alien character. From the surface of Mars, the two moons Phobos and Deimos are far too small and oddly shaped to provide the perfect circular mask we enjoy on Earth. Instead of a majestic crown, a Martian observer witnesses a frantic, misshapen transit that resembles a dark, irregular stone skipping across a fire. These lumpy, asteroid-like bodies move with a startling speed, crossing the solar disk in a matter of seconds rather than minutes. Because they cannot completely cover the star, they never reveal the delicate corona or plunge the desert into the deep, silvery silence of totality. It is a raw, unpolished version of the eclipse, a reminder of the moonless or small-mooned worlds where the sun is never truly defeated. Feel the profound stillness of your mind as you imagine standing on the cold orange dust, watching a jagged silhouette bite into the sun. This structure of imperfect alignment highlights the unique privilege of our own circular, perfectly sized moon. On Mars, the eclipse is a frantic transit. On Earth, it is a spiritual revelation that anchors our place in the universe. Deep within the light of distant, nameless stars, human ingenuity has adapted the concept of the eclipse to find worlds that are completely invisible to our most powerful telescopes. Exoplanet hunters utilize the transit method, a sophisticated technique that looks for the minute, rhythmic dimming of a star's brightness. This occurs when an orbiting planet passes directly between its sun and our sensors, effectively creating an eclipse trillions of miles away. By watching these distant alien shadows, we have discovered thousands of planets ranging from massive gas giants to rocky worlds that might harbour liquid water. We are essentially using the eclipsing shadows of other worlds to map the contents of the galaxy and understand our cosmic neighbours. It is a profound extension of the chaser's passion, turned into a precise scientific tool for exploring the unknown depths of space. This structure of observation allows us to see into systems that are far beyond our reach, guided by the simple physics of obstruction. Every dip in a star's light is a potential signature of a new world, a fleeting shadow that tells a story of another solar system. We're no longer limited to our own neighbourhood. We're now watchers of a galaxy-wide symphony of alignments that stretches across the stars. Through the careful measurement of these far-off transits, we unlock a wealth of data that goes far beyond the mere existence of a planet. By analysing the exact depth and duration of the light's decline, astronomers can calculate the precise physical size and the speed of an alien world's orbit. This information allows us to determine if a planet is a bloated giant of gas or a compact sphere of rock and iron. Notice the gentle, steady rhythm of your breathing, feeling completely grounded and secure as you contemplate the immense scales of these calculations. These light curves act as the fingerprint of a distant world, revealing its distance from its parent star and the likelihood of its habitability. It is a masterful use of non-light to define the presence and nature of matter across the vast, empty void. If we look closer at the variations in these transits, we can even begin to decipher the chemical composition of a planet's atmosphere. As the starlight filters through the edges of the passing world's air, it picks up unique spectral signatures of water, carbon, or oxygen. In this way, the shadow of a distant planet becomes a lens through which we can imagine the surface of another world. This structure of mutual shadow reaches its most complex expression in the dance of eclipsing binary star systems found throughout the galaxy. In these systems, two suns are locked in a tight gravitational embrace, orbiting a shared centre of mass in such a way that they periodically cross in front of each other. This causes a constant rhythmic fluctuation in the total light reaching our eyes as one star is hidden by its companion. Astronomers track these celestial pulses to measure the mass and temperature of stars with an accuracy that would be impossible through direct observation alone. These systems are cosmic clocks, their eclipses providing a steady metronome that reveals the internal secrets of stellar evolution and galactic history. It is a world of double sunsets and recurring twilights, a theatre of light and shadow on a truly grand scale. Standing in the imaginary light of such a system, one would witness a sky where the sun itself is subject to the same laws of disappearance. The constant interplay of these two fiery bodies creates a dynamic and ever-changing environment. It is the ultimate manifestation of the eclipse, where the stars themselves take turns acting as the mask and the crown for one another. If we were to look closer at the vast architecture of the universe, we would find that the phenomenon of the eclipse serves as a fundamental yardstick. By measuring the time it takes for a shadow to sweep across a world, we can deduce the immense distances that separate celestial bodies. These alignments were the first tools used by ancient civilizations to begin mapping the true size and scale of the solar system. The precise timing of these events allows us to calibrate the movements of everything from the smallest moon to the most distant galaxy. Eclipses are the benchmarks of the cosmos, the predictable moments where the geometry of space becomes visible and measurable to the human mind. They provide a structural framework that allows us to see the solar system not as a collection of random points, but as a cohesive machine. As you relax further into this state of contemplation, imagine the invisible lines of geometry connecting every sphere in a web of light and dark. This structure of understanding is built upon the simple fact that objects in motion will eventually cross and reveal their true proportions. In those moments of crossing, the scale of the universe is finally brought down to a human level of comprehension. Beyond the visual beauty of the shadow, the absolute predictability of an eclipse stands as the ultimate demonstration of an elegant mathematical order. The fact that we can calculate the arrival of a shadow to the exact second, centuries in advance, proves that the universe operates on a bedrock of logic. It is a triumph of human reason and mathematical precision over the mystery of the infinite and the chaos of the void. Notice how your heart beats in its own quiet, steady rhythm, a microscopic reflection of the same clockwork that drives the stars above. Every alignment that strikes the Earth at the predicted time and place is a verification of the equations that govern gravity and motion. This reliability offers a sense of profound security, a realization that we inhabit a universe of consistent and understandable patterns. The eclipse is the moment where the abstract beauty of mathematics becomes a visceral, physical reality for everyone who watches. It is a bridge between the quiet calculations of the scientist and the awestruck experience of the person standing in the field. In the shadow, we find the proof that the cosmos is not a series of accidents, but a masterpiece of design. This fleeting nature of totality serves as a poignant and powerful reminder that nothing in the universe is truly static or permanent. The shadow races across the landscape at thousands of miles per hour, staying for only a few minutes before disappearing as quickly as it arrived. It is a visual representation of the constant high-speed motion that defines every atom and every galaxy in existence across the void. We often perceive the ground beneath us as stable and the stars above as fixed, but the eclipse shatters these illusions of stillness. It forces us to acknowledge that we are riding on a spinning sphere that is itself hurtling through space at staggering velocities. The rapid onset and departure of the darkness make the invisible speeds of the solar system tangible and real to our senses. The vibration of a universe that is never at rest can be felt in the cooling air and the returning light of the sun. The eclipse is a snapshot of a dynamic process, a brief pause in a journey that began billions of years ago. It teaches us to cherish the temporary, for the motion of the spheres never stops to accommodate the human desire for stability. Every single alignment of the sun, moon, and earth is a temporary and unrepeatable masterpiece, never to be seen in exactly the same way. While the orbital cycles bring back a general geometry, the specific conditions of the atmosphere and the activity of the sun create a unique event. No two coronas are ever identical, and no two shadows fall across the landscape with the same texture of silver light. The universe never paints the same picture twice, ensuring that every moment of totality is a pristine and exclusive occurrence for those who watch. This inherent rarity adds a layer of preciousness to the experience, making the few minutes of darkness a once-in-a-lifetime sighting for the soul. Each eclipse is a fleeting gift, a specific configuration of matter and light that exists only for a heartbeat in time. As you settle into the final moments of this journey, let the stillness of your mind reflect the beauty of this unrepeatable event. We are witnesses to a series of individual miracles, each one defined by its own specific and vanishing perfection. The eclipse is the ultimate expression of the universe's ability to create art through the simple, silent, and majestic dance of spheres. This entire journey of shadows and light reaches its final synthesis in the realization that our observation is as essential as the alignment itself. The true miracle of a solar eclipse is not merely the intersection of two celestial bodies, but the fact that we exist at the right moment to see it. We are conscious witnesses situated at the perfect coordinates in the universe's long history to comprehend and be moved by such immense beauty. This alignment of consciousness and geometry is the final wonder, a realization that we are the eyes of the universe looking back at itself. In the quiet after the shadow has passed, we are left with a deep understanding of our own significance within the vastness of the void. We are the architects of meaning, turning a fleeting alignment into a timeless moment of cosmic grace. This final wonder is the realization that the universe is not just a collection of moving spheres, but a masterpiece that requires a witness. We are the precise consciousness positioned at the perfect point in time and space to look up and recognize the silent geometric poetry of the stars. It is a profound synthesis of matter and mind, where the vastness of the cosmos finds its meaning in the quiet heart of the observer. Surprisingly, the mathematics of the heavens align so flawlessly that they seem to demand our presence to be understood by a thinking mind. If we were to look closer at the sheer improbability of our existence, we would find that we are the only eyes in the dark capable of celebrating the light. This cosmic appointment was set eons ago, waiting for the moment when a living being would stand beneath the shadow and feel the pulse of the infinite. Deep within this awareness lies the ultimate truth that we are not separate from the celestial dance, but are its most vital participants. Our ability to feel awe and to seek the patterns of the spheres is the very reason the alignment holds such power over the human spirit. Every eclipse is a reminder that we belong to the architecture of the stars, serving as the bridge between the silent void and the warmth of human understanding. If we were to look closer at your current surroundings, the time has come to let the external world and the memory of the shadow fade. Your journey through the 101 facts has reached its conclusion, and the weight of your body is now your only focus. Allow your awareness to settle into the very tips of your toes and the heavy stillness of your feet. This quiet room is a sanctuary where the muscles in your legs and hips begin to release their last traces of tension as you sink into the sheets. The weight of your thighs becomes a heavy anchor, grounding you in the safety of your resting place. Your lower back surrenders entirely to the support beneath you as you breathe out a final, slow sigh of relief. Notice the warmth spreading like a slow, calm current through your chest and down your arms. Your stomach rises and falls in an effortless cycle, while your fingers curl naturally in a state of limp and total inactivity. Each exhale carries away the last remnants of the day, leaving a peaceful space for sleep to fill every corner of your mind. Your jaw unclasps, and the small muscles around your eyes finally stop their flickering, as the forehead becomes a smooth expanse of calm. The weight of your head is perfectly balanced on the pillow, free from any remaining marks of effort or concentration. Your entire physical being is now a landscape of absolute stillness, ready to descend into the deep. The air in the room is cool and still, wrapping around you like a soft, invisible blanket of comfort. This area is entirely yours, a private sanctuary where the only sound is the gentle, rhythmic hum of your own breath. The mattress holds you with a firm kindness, accepting the full weight of your existence without any question or resistance. If we were to listen to the silence, it would tell the story of a cycle that has been gracefully and completely finished. The pillow is a cool refuge for your head, a place where all remaining thoughts dissolve into a mist of pure, heavy rest. Every breath you take is a slow, deepening descent into a well of absolute and perfect peace. This structure of sleep is a natural homecoming, a return to the quietest and most ancient part of yourself. A profound stillness is a comforting friend, acting as a soft velvet curtain drawn over your surroundings to protect your rest. You are safe, you are still, and you are ready for the long hours of restoration that wait in the deep. Nothing remains to be done, and no part of your environment requires attention until the day returns to the room. The stillness is absolute, a thick and comforting layer of peace that has settled over every corner of your home. You're drifting away now, moving into the welcoming embrace of a dreamless and deep slumber. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.